Jesus revealed the secret of prosperity in this parable, Jesus Christ. Teachings of the parables applied. What if I told you that you re sitting on top of a fortune and don't even know it? I'm not talking about money hidden under the mattress. I'm talking about something far more valuable that's inside you right now, waiting to be discovered and multiplied. Most people spend their entire lives looking for the key to prosperity out there, when it's always been in their own hands. And the most shocking part, Jesus already revealed this secret over 2,000 years ago, but almost no one truly understood it. Have you ever felt invisible, like no one recognizes your worth, your effort, your potential? Have you looked at your bank account at the end of the month and felt that tightness in your chest, thinking, why is it always so hard for me? Have you seen people around you prospering while you keep spinning your wheels in the same place? I know exactly what that pain feels like, because millions of people wake up every day with this anguish. The feeling that you're doing everything wrong, that God has forgotten about you, that your moment will never come, when everything seemed lost in your journey. You've probably asked yourself, is there really a path to prosperity, or is this only for some privileged few? But here is the truth that goes against everything you've been taught. The problem isn't lack of opportunity. It's not bad luck. It's not lack of connections. The problem is that you're burying your talents. Yes, you read that right. What should be multiplying is rotting beneath the ground of your comfort zone, your fear, your procrastination. And while you keep your gifts buried, you're losing not just money, but purpose, impact, and the joy of seeing God work through you. God sustained me when I understood that He had already given me everything I needed to win. I was just looking in the wrong place. Today, you're going to discover a parable of Jesus that will turn your life upside down. It's not just another pretty religious story to read and forget. It's a practical prosperity manual that works both spiritually and financially, both emotionally and relationally. You'll learn why some people multiply everything they touch, while others lose even the little they have. You'll understand what it really means to be faithful in little, and how that qualifies you to receive much. And most importantly, you'll discover which of the three servants in this parable you've been and how to change that before it's too late. You are not alone. God is with you on this journey of discovery, and He's about to reveal secrets that will unlock doors you thought were locked forever. Stay with me until the end, because this message is no coincidence. God heard your desperate prayer, asking for a way out, asking for clarity, asking for direction. And this parable is the answer you've been waiting for. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why prosperity isn't about how much you have, but about what you do with what you have. You'll learn the difference between faith that moves mountains and fear that buries talents. And you'll receive an urgent call to unearth what you've hidden and start multiplying. Heaven is silent, but God is working behind the scenes of your story, preparing a turnaround that begins now with this message that can change everything. Faith in Jesus Christ isn't just believing He exists, it's trusting that He placed inside you everything you need to prosper, and the time has come to prove it. Context of the parable: you know that moment in life when you feel something big is about to happen. That was exactly what was in the air when Jesus gathered his disciples to tell a story that would forever change how we understand prosperity. We're not talking about just any conversation on just any day. Jesus was days away from facing the cross, and every word that came from his lips carried the weight of eternity. Imagine the scene: a master who knows his days are numbered, carefully choosing the final lessons he would leave for humanity. When God speaks to the heart of someone about to depart, every teaching becomes a priceless treasure. And it was in this intense context, charged with emotion and urgency, that he decided to speak about talents, responsibility, and the true meaning of prospering. It was no coincidence. It was divine strategy to prepare us for something much greater than we imagine. The parable is recorded in Matthew 25-14-30, and if you pay attention to the context, you'll notice that Jesus wasn't just telling a little story to pass the time. He was revealing kingdom principles that work both in heaven and on earth. Think with me. A rich man is about to take a long journey, and before leaving, he gathers his trusted servants. This man represents Jesus himself, who knew he would return to the Father, but not without first leaving everything organized here. He distributes his goods among 3 servants, and here's the detail many people skip over. Each one received according to his ability. It wasn't a lottery. It wasn't favoritism. It was careful evaluation of potential. One received 5 talents, another 2, and the last received 1. When God sustained me in difficult moments, I realized that He never gives a burden greater than we can bear, nor a blessing smaller than we can manage. Now, let's understand what was really happening behind the scenes of this story. That master wasn't simply distributing money. He was entrusting his wealth, his legacy, his reputation into the hands of those servants. It was a test of character, faithfulness, and vision. Imagine receiving the keys to your boss's business and him saying, "Take care of this for me while I travel. I'm going to trust you." The pressure would be immense, wouldn't it? But it would also be a tremendous honor, and that's exactly how God works with us. He doesn't give us responsibilities to see us fail, but to see us grow. Every gift you possess, every opportunity that comes your way, every idea that springs up in your mind is like a talent being placed in your hands. The question isn't whether you deserve it or not. The question is, what are you going to do with it? You are not alone. God is with you on this journey of discovery and multiplication. There's a detail in the parable that gives me chills every time I read it. After delivering the talents, the text says the master departed. He didn't stay watching, didn't put up cameras, didn't send messages every day demanding results. He simply left and trusted. Does this remind you of anything? That's right. God works in silence, even when He seems distant. Many times, in the midst of our daily struggles, we feel we're alone, that no one is seeing our efforts, that heaven is silent, but God is working behind the scenes of our story. And it's precisely in these moments that our character is tested. When no one is watching, when there's no audience to applaud, when the reward seems distant, do you remain faithful? Do you keep working? Do you keep multiplying what you received? Or do you get comfortable, bury your talents, and wait for time to solve everything on its own? And here begins the most intriguing part of the story, the one that shakes the structures of what we've learned about success and failure. The servants were left alone with their talents, each with a different amount, each with their own insecurities and ambitions. What do you think was going through each of their minds? The one who received 5 talents must have felt tremendous responsibility. The one who received 2 perhaps compared himself to the first, and the one who received 1. This is the most complex character in the story, and soon you'll understand why. But before we judge any of them, we need to look in the mirror and ask, which servant am I? When everything seemed lost in my life, I realized that God saw your pain and gave you exactly what you needed to start over. The question now isn't how much you received, but what you're doing with what's in your hands. And it's precisely about these choices, these attitudes, this courage to act, or this fear of trying, that the parable will teach us profound truths. The hidden meaning of talents. Here's the point where most people stumble in interpreting this parable, and I need to show you why. When Jesus spoke about talents, many people today automatically think of abilities, like knowing how to sing, draw, or speak well in public. But wait, because back then, a talent was actual money, a high-value coin. A single talent was equivalent to about 6,000 denarii, and a denarius was 1 day's wages. Do the math. 1 talent represented approximately 20 years of work for a common laborer. It was a fortune, not pocket change. So when the master gave 5 talents to that first servant, he was basically saying, here's 100 years of my sweat. Take care of this for me. But Jesus, being the wise master he is, used this image of money to speak about something infinitely greater and more valuable. God heard your prayer when you asked for purpose, and the answer might be hidden in what you already have in your hands. Let's peel this onion layer by layer, because the meaning here is too deep to pass by. The talents in the parable represent everything God deposits in you from the moment you're born. We're talking about natural gifts, yes, but also opportunities that appear in your life. That job opening that came out of nowhere. Talent. That idea that woke you up at 3 in the morning. Talent. That free time you have on weekends. Talent. The health you possess. Talent. The relationships you've built. Talents. Even the painful experiences you've been through can be talents, because they made you stronger, wiser, more empathetic. When God speaks to the heart of someone, he doesn't just speak through beautiful words in a moment of prayer. He speaks through circumstances, doors that open, resources that appear, people who cross your path. Now pay attention to this detail that will blow your mind. Each servant received according to his ability. This means God isn't unfair or irresponsible. He knows you better than you know yourself. He knows exactly how much weight you can carry at this moment in your life. You know that phrase, God doesn't give a burden greater than we can bear. Well, it comes from this principle. The servant who received 5 talents had the emotional structure, intellectual capacity, and maturity to handle that responsibility. The one who received 2, same thing, and the one who received 1 was also perfectly capable of multiplying it. The problem was never the quantity. It was never about having less or more than others. The problem is when you compare your 1 talent with your neighbor's 5 talents and decide it's not worth trying. God sustained me in moments when I thought I had received little, and it was precisely there that I learned small beginnings can generate great harvests. Let me give you some practical examples of this in real life, because theory without application doesn't transform anyone. Think of a person who has the gift of communication. They can use that talent to encourage people through messages, create content that impacts lives, mediate conflicts at work, teach children with patience. Or they can bury that talent, stay silent, not take a stand, not help anyone out of fear of making mistakes. Now imagine someone who has financial resources. They can invest in businesses that generate jobs, help charitable institutions, sponsor projects that transform communities. Or they can simply accumulate, spend on frivolities, and waste the chance to make a difference. And that person who went through trauma and healed, that's a powerful talent. They can become a therapist, counselor, writer, support group leader, or they can keep everything to themselves and let other people suffer alone through the same pains they've already overcome. Do you see how it works? Tears that God sees are never wasted when you transform your pain into purpose. And there's another layer to this revelation that needs to be crystal clear. Talents also represent the time you have available. Yes, time is talent. You have 24 hours a day, just like everyone else. The difference between those who prosper and those who stagnate is in how those hours are invested. If you spend 8 hours working, 8 sleeping, there are 8 hours left. What do you do with them? Watch endless series. Scroll through social media feeds non-stop. Or invest in learning something new, developing a project, cultivating relationships, taking care of your health. I'm not saying you can't rest or have fun, far from it. But I'm nudging you to wake up and realize that you are not alone. God is with you, giving you 86,400 seconds every day as fresh talents. The question is, are you multiplying that time or burying it in distractions? Faith in Jesus Christ isn't just believing He exists, it's trusting that He equipped you with everything you need to win. And when you understand that even the air you breathe is a talent, your perspective on prosperity changes completely. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about now. The 2 servants who prospered. Now we come to the part of the story that should be studied in all business schools, churches, and even in Sunday family conversations. The first 2 servants did something that seems obvious, but revolutionizes lives when truly applied. They worked. They didn't stand still waiting for the money to multiply itself. They didn't put it under the mattress, waiting for magical appreciation. They went out, negotiated, invested, took calculated risks, and put those talents to work. The servant who received 5 talents went to the market, perhaps invested in trade caravans, bought goods, made strategic partnerships. The result, he gained another 5 talents. He doubled his master's wealth. And the second servant, who had received 2 talents, did exactly the same thing with what he had. He didn't stay lamenting for having received less than the first. He didn't waste time with envy or self-pity. He simply worked and gained 2 more talents. God sustained me when I learned that it's not about having much, it's about doing much with what you have. Let us pause here because there is a behavior pattern in these 2 servants that you need to copy and paste into your life. First, they had initiative. Nobody had to nag them to work. Nobody held weekly accountability meetings. The master traveled and they simply acted. This is called proactive responsibility, my friend. Second, they weren't afraid to risk. Investing always involves risk. They could have lost everything in a bad transaction, a shady deal, but they trusted their own discernment and divine providence. Third, they thought about the master's interest, not just their own. They multiplied his wealth, didn't divert it to their own pockets. That's integrity in action. Fourth, they were patient and persistent. Multiplying capital takes time, doesn't happen overnight. They worked hard, day after day, until reaping results. And fifth, they had long-term vision. They knew that one day the master would return and ask for accounts. When God speaks to the heart about prosperity, He's teaching you these 5 principles. Now comes the most beautiful scene in the parable, the one that should be engraved in gold on your home's wall. The master returns from his journey, gathers the servants, and begins the accounting. The first servant presents himself excitedly. "Master, you gave me 5 talents. Look here, I've gained 5 more." And the master responds with words that echo through eternity. "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." Man, this isn't just praise, it's a promotion. It's territory expansion. It's eternal recognition. Next, the second servant arrives. "Master, you gave me 2 talents. Here are 2 more I've gained." And guess what? He receives exactly the same response, word for word. "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." Wait, this means the guy who had less received the same reward as the guy who had more. Exactly. God heard your prayer when you asked for justice, and here's the answer. For God, faithfulness is worth more than quantity. Let me break this paradigm that might be stuck in your head. You do, auntie, need to have much to be rewarded, much. You just need to be faithful with what you have. That's the secret most people don't understand. They keep waiting to have 5 talents to start acting when God is waiting for them to be faithful with the 1 talent they already possess. Think of a person who earns minimum wage but is faithful in tithing, helping those in need and investing in their own growth. Are they prospering? Absolutely. Now, think of a person who earns 10 minimum wages but is selfish, wasteful, and doesn't multiply anything. Are they prospering? No way. Real prosperity isn't measured by the size of your bank account. It's measured by faithfulness in what you manage. You can have little money but lots of love to distribute. You can have few skills but lots of willingness to learn. You can have few resources but lots of creativity to multiply. You are not alone. God is with you, observing not how much you have, but how much you do with what you have. And here's the part that gives me chills. The two servants entered into the joy of their master. Do you know what this means? Communion, intimacy, participation in the master's joys. It wasn't just a pat on the back and thanks for the work. It was an invitation to level up, to enter into a deeper relationship, to share in victories and rewards. When you're faithful with the talents God gave you, you don't just gain material blessings, you gain access to something much greater, intimacy with Him. You begin to experience joys that money can't buy, peace that circumstances can't shake, purpose that crisis can't destroy. These two servants became eternal examples that it's worth trusting, risking, working, and multiplying. They proved that God works in silence, rewarding those who don't need spotlights to be faithful. And now, while we celebrate these two's victories, we need to look at the third servant and understand what went terribly wrong in his story, because there's a warning there that could save your life. The servant who buried the talent. Now it's time to talk about the most controversial character and, at the same time, the one most similar to many people you know, and perhaps even to yourself at some point in life. The third servant received 1 talent and, instead of doing something with it, dug a hole in the ground and buried the money. He simply hid it, kept it, preserved it, and waited for the master to return. When I first heard this story, I thought, what a lazy person. But when I studied it more deeply, I discovered the problem wasn't laziness. It was something much more dangerous and common, paralyzing fear. This servant was afraid to risk, afraid to lose, afraid to disappoint, afraid to try and fail. And this fear prevented him from prospering. How many times have you failed to start a project because you were afraid it wouldn't work out? How many opportunities have you buried because you thought you weren't good enough? When everything seemed lost in your life, perhaps it was precisely because you were burying your talents instead of moving them. When the master returned and called the servants for accountability, the third presented himself with an excuse many people use to this day. He said, "Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours." Seems like a reasonable explanation, doesn't it? He returned the money intact, didn't steal, didn't lose, didn't spend. But the master's response was devastating. "You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest." Wow. The master wasn't asking for miracles. He was asking for the minimum. Put it in the bank and let it earn interest. Didn't even need to be an investment expert, just didn't need to leave the money sitting still. God saw your pain when you were stagnant, but He's showing you that even minimal movement is better than total paralysis. Now pay attention to the diagnosis the master gave. Wicked and slothful servant. It wasn't incompetent. It wasn't unlucky. It was wicked and slothful. Wicked because his intentions were selfish. He only thought about protecting himself. Slothful because he was irresponsible with what was entrusted to him. Negligence is a silent sin that destroys destinies. It's that "I'll do it later. It's not my thing. I'll wait for the right moment." And while you wait, life passes, opportunities go away, and talents rot buried in the backyard of your comfort zone. This servant represents all those people who have immense potential but live in mediocrity by their own choice. They know how to sing but never get on stage. They know how to write but never publish anything. They have brilliant ideas but never get them off paper. They have resources but never invest. Tears that God sees are precisely those of people who reach the end of life and realize they wasted the talents they received. And there's a part of the sentence that's even more shocking. The master ordered, "Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. The others reacted, "But master, he already has 10. And the master explained the most powerful and at the same time most frightening principle of prosperity. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away." This isn't injustice, it's a spiritual law of movement. Whoever uses, receives more. Whoever stops, loses even what they have. You see this working in everything. A muscle that isn't exercised atrophies. A mind that isn't challenged rusts. A business that doesn't innovate goes broke. A relationship that isn't cultivated dies. A gift that isn't practiced disappears. You are not alone. God is with you, pushing you out of your comfort zone, because He knows that stagnation is the beginning of spiritual, emotional, and even financial death. But there's a twist in this story that needs to be crystal clear. The servant wasn't punished for losing the talent. He was punished for not trying. If he had invested and lost everything in a market crisis, you know what the master's response would probably be? Understanding and a new opportunity. Because risking and failing is part of the learning process. But burying out of fear, that's unacceptable in God's kingdom. God doesn't bless spiritual cowardice. He honors the courage of those who try, even if they up it. Think of the Apostle Peter. He denied Jesus 3 times. Total failure, right? But Jesus restored him because Peter had the courage to step out of the boat and walk on water before had the courage to try. The third servant's problem is that he never took the first step. He remained immobilized by fear, disguised as prudence, and his fate. He was cast into outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Heavy, isn't it? But necessary, because heaven is silent, but God is working to show you that there are eternal consequences for temporal choices. And now you need to understand how to transform this lesson into a life strategy that really works. The question that changes everything now, it's no longer about the servants in the parable. It's about you looking in the mirror of your soul and answering with brutal honesty. The first question that will change everything is this: what has God placed in your hands? It may seem simple, but it requires deep introspection. I'm not just talking about money or obvious skills. I'm talking about everything. What relationships do you have that others don't? What access do you possess that could open doors for someone? What experience have you lived that could teach other people? What platform do you have, even if it's small, that could be used to impact lives? Your Instagram with 300 followers is a talent. Your house that can host a study group is a talent. Your car that can give rides to those who need them is a talent. Your patience that can calm anxious people is a talent. God sustained me when I stopped complaining about what I didn't have and started being grateful for what was in my hands. And that's when everything changed. The second question cuts even deeper. Are you multiplying or burying? Be brutally honest now. That gift you have for writing, are you using it, or have you left it stored in a drawer of excuses? That money left over at the end of the month, are you investing it wisely or spending it on things that don't add value? That free time on weekends, are you using it to grow or to wither in empty entertainment? That innovative idea that popped into your head, are you developing it or did you let it die from fear of failure? Burying isn't always literal. Sometimes you bury with procrastination, saying, "I'll start Monday." Other times you bury with comparison, looking at someone else's 5 talents and despising your single talent. Sometimes you bury with excessive planning, studying so much you never act. When God speaks to the heart about acting, He's not asking for perfection, He's asking for movement. The third question is even more uncomfortable. Has fear or faith been guiding your decisions? Think about the last important choices you made. When that opportunity to change jobs appeared, did you evaluate with faith or let fear decide? When the chance to invest in a business arose, did you analyze with wisdom or paralyze with insecurity? When God put it in your heart to start something new, did you obey or invent 1,000 excuses? Fear disguises itself very well. It comes dressed as prudence, as realism, as "I'll wait for the right moment." But deep down, it's spiritual cowardice. And look, I'm not talking about being irresponsible or impulsive. I'm talking about discerning when God is pushing you out of the nest and you reclutching the edges with all your strength. God saw your pain caused by fear, but He also sees the giant potential that's imprisoned inside you, waiting to be released. The fourth question will make you reflect on something you may have never considered. Are you waiting for the right moment, or is God waiting for your action? This one's cruel, I know, but it needs to be said. There are people who spent their entire lives waiting for perfect circumstances to begin, waiting to have more money, more time, more knowledge, more courage, more support. And you know what happened? Life passed, opportunities left, and talents remained buried. The right moment is an illusion that fear creates to justify inaction. The naked truth is that you'll never feel 100% ready. You'll never have all the answers. You'll never eliminate all risks. The right moment is when you decide you'll start despite the fear, despite uncertainties, despite imperfections. You are not alone. God is with you in every first step you take, but He won't take the step for you. Faith in Jesus Christ is trusting that He'll complete what you start, but you need to start. And here's the fifth and final question, the one that should be echoing in your mind right now. If Jesus came back today and asked for an account of the talents He gave you, what would you say? Could you look Him in the eyes and say, "Lord, I took what you gave me and multiplied it"? Or would you have to lower your head and admit, "Lord, I was afraid and buried it"? This isn't a rhetorical question to make you feel guilty. It's a wake-up question to make you act while there's still time. Because the truth is that one day, we don't know when, we'll have to give an account. And on that day, it won't help to say, "I was going to start. I was planning. I wanted to, but couldn't." What will matter is what you actually did with what you received. Tears that God sees today for wasted talents can transform into eternal joy if you decide right now to unearth what was hidden. God heard your prayer asking for a new chance, and this message is the answer. Heaven is silent, but God is working, moving pieces, preparing paths, but He's waiting for you to take the first step of faith. Because everything you've learned up to here only has value if you transform knowledge into action.